Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, this complex CONy webinar. I am Amos Korchin. I am president of CONy, the annual meeting on controversies in neurology, and by my side is Nathan Bornstein. Professor Bornstein is chairman of the meeting, and he will lead it later on. Now, CONy consists of debates. Many of you have probably attended some of these meetings, and we are going to have our next meeting in Krakow, in Poland, in March 26, 28, 2026. This is going to be attended by many key opinion leaders. And actually, this is a festive meeting because this is the 20th meeting, which has been running along quite nicely for the past several years. We are going to be with you, and Nathan, please go ahead and direct the meeting.
Thank you very much, Professor Korchin. It's a pleasure and honor to be dear colleagues and friends as the chairman of the CONy Controversies in Neurology. Just to say that today at 11 a.m. US time and our times, it was published, the embargo was released on the publication that neurological disorders actually show that more than half of the people in the US have any kind of one of the 36 neurological disorders, which means that neurological disorders have a very huge burden of healthcare everywhere. So it's just timely that we have this webinar on neurological disorders. It's a CONy webinar 2025. And it's a big and great pleasure and honor for me to introduce the first speaker, Professor Idan Segev. Professor Idan Segev is computational neuroscientist at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Professor Segev was one of the pillars in the EU Human Brain Project and the Swiss Blue Brain Project. He is the chief editor of the Open Access Frontier in Neuroscience journal, and also it's related to the Kid Journal, which is his idea to introduce science to kids. And so he has this Frontier Young Minds, and it was a very interesting and lively project. Idan will tell us about what is the future of neurology in the area of artificial intelligence. Idan, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. And can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Amos, for the invitation and for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what I see as the future of humanity in general, of brain science in particular, and I think also of neurology. So because I have only 20 minutes, which is very, very short, I will do it very intensely, and I hope that by the end you will have questions. So the plan of the talk of these 20 minutes is to just introduce to you the AI revolution, or the neuro AI revolution. You all know about the AI revolution, large language models, but I want to touch on the connection between neuro and AI. And I'll give you a few examples later about the quite amazing breakthroughs that became available because of this connection between what we know about the brain and the machines we build, similar to us in many ways, the neuro-AI connection. And if I have time, I will say a word about Frontiers for Young Minds, because I really feel that we need to prepare the next generation to the huge changes that we are all undergoing. They really have to be prepared, and this is for us, scientists and physicians, to prepare them. So very briefly, I want to just highlight something that some of you may know, but some not, that most of the new AI technology that we are using, in particular the deep neural networks, are inspired by what we learned about the brain. This includes also the large language models like ChatGPT. So we know that the brain is built from neurons, a huge amount of neurons that are built in a network level from the input processed inside the brain in different layers until we generate a behavioral output. We know that the brain uses signals like spikes and synapses to transfer information and to also, and that's very important, to change. Plastically, this amazing technology, the synapse, is capable of plastically change during behavior and learning. So this intuition that you have artificial element that is called artificial neuron, that you have connection between them, which is called artificial synapses, that you have layer one, which is the input layer, let's say the retina, and then there is inside processing until there is an output, let's say a face of Amos. I know that Amos is looking at me or Nathan is looking at me. This processing is inspired by the brain. But the main thing is that this processing of the deep neural network is changing if you want to teach this neural network something like recognizing face or recognizing a cup of tea or so forth. So the whole idea of these deep neural networks is from examples. If you give enough examples and you change the weight of the synapses until the input produce the correct output, this deep neural network is behaving in many ways like our brain. It can generalize to new items that it never saw before, a new cup or a new face, and still knows that it is a face or a cup. So this is a nice thing that because we understood how the brain learns, process information, we can now build a technology that is very, very similar to us, very, very close to us in many ways. And we can discuss whether they are better than us or not, and that's another issue to discuss maybe in the future. But the interesting thing is that not only that we built machines that are similar to us in many ways, that are learning, machine learning, but this machine learning is very helpful for us to solve problems that we could not solve before. So it's a ping pong between the brain that inspires the technology and the new technology that helps a lot to understand the brain, to develop new drugs. As you may know, the 2024 Nobel Prize in chemistry is using deep neural networks to find ways that the brain could not find, how to fold proteins in the correct folding so it will be functional. So it's a very interesting ping pong back and forth between brain-inspired deep neural network and AI technologies, and AI technologies help us to understand the brain and develop new technologies. So after this introduction, I want to show you examples of using these new technologies, the deep neural network or machine learning technology, AI technology, to do something that we could not do before. This is just one recent example published in Nature a year and a half ago, whereby taking a technology or multi-unit recordings from the brain of a spinal cord injury person. So it's after spinal cord injury, you can record from many electrodes, many hundreds of electrodes from the brain, the signals of intention to move. You can bypass the spinal cord, which is injured, and you can then inject, using this technology of electrodes, into the spinal cord below the location of the cut. And this person, within quite fast, after so many years of not being able to move, he can move, he can generate commands from the brain. It is being online, real-time, read by AI technology, transfer into the spinal cord, and the muscles are responding. So it's a bypass of the regular spinal cord, but in this case, the bypass requires reading the brain intention in real time, bypassing it and stimulating the correct nerves and muscle in the spinal and nerve in the spinal cord and muscles in the leg and so forth, and this person really can walk. It's quite amazing. I don't have time to show you how this guy who was actually paralyzed for 10 years, a Swiss fellow, started to walk, learned to walk again, and doing quite well on the treadmill and so forth. You can read his amazing response that after 12 years of being paralyzed, suddenly I can give a command and my muscle respond. And I can still walk and swim and ride bicycles. It's amazing. So that's one direction. The other amazing, I was very impressed by the following thing, and this is again using AI, which I will explain in a second, to be able to interact with a locked-in person who cannot interact with the world, for example, to talk to him. In this case, to him, because I'm going to show an example of a man, but of course we can do it also to women. So the idea here is to use the same technology. It's a neuropixel technology, similar to the neural link of Elon Musk. It's an electrode with a lot of probes, many hundred of probes that you can implant into the human, in this case, human motor cortex. So the implantation of several hundred of electrodes is, or this case 200 electrodes. Each electrode has many probes. So it's many units, several thousand of neurons you can record from this motor cortex of this person. And then you can ask this person that is now sitting with all these electrodes to try to imagine that he writes physically, that he writes with his motor cortex. Of course, he cannot move his hands, he cannot write, but he can imagine that he's writing the letter A. So he's imagining that he's writing a letter A, like if you close your eyes and you imagine that you write a letter A in your motor cortex, and then they record the activity related to the letter A. Then you do the same thing to letter B. Ask him to imagine letter B, imagine letter C, imagine letter D, and so forth. So you get responses per letter. It's a very noisy, huge data, huge spiking data for several times until the machine, the deep learning machine, the AI machine learns how this particular person represents in his motor cortex the letter A, the letter B, and so forth. You use real-time technology to separate the activity related to letter A, to letter B, to letter W, to letter C, and so forth in real time. And then you can ask this person, talk to me. Talk to me. So he's talking to you. So I'm going to give you an example of a person. This is a Brazilian guy who got locked in because of several diseases, and he could not speak. He cannot interact with the world. Even blinking the eye was almost impossible for him. But he can generate thoughts. He can generate ideas. He can generate thinking about movement. That's what he did. So I'm going to show you real-time interaction. So he's typing on the computer directly from the brain. So he was asked, where were you born? This is now real time. He hears you asking, where were you born? And he responds. You can see on the screen, he's writing from his head, I was born in Rio de Janeiro, and so forth. About 90 letters per minute. You can read his brain, analyze it with AI, project it into the computer, and for the first time, this person can really talk to you. 90 letters per minute is quite fast, actually. I cannot type faster on my cell phone. So it's not bad, and it's becoming better and better now that we have on the background ChatGPT, language models. It really enhances our capability to even know what he wants to say. Before he completes the sentence, it already knows that that's what he plans to do. So the number of letters increases, and he can really talk to you quite fast now. That's a technology that is quite amazing. Language prosthesis. Of course, then, and now I want to talk with a few minutes left about the challenges. One challenge, of course, everybody knows that we don't want to be invasive. So if we can read thoughts at the level that I spoke about before from EEG, non-invasive, this will be wonderful. But of course, EEG is much lower resolution, spatial resolution. But I just read a paper, just came a month ago in Nature Communication, about the capability to start. It's not yet reading words from the brain, but it's reading movement intention, finger intention. So the person, this is now EEG, non-invasive. You can read the EEG. imagine you are moving your finger, and the network, the deep neural network, analyze it and moves a finger of a robot, just to make sure that what you think the robot can do. So this is start of a new non-invasive brain-computer interface with an in-between deep neural network analyzing the signals. I want to say a word about what we do in the lab at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. We are trying to understand the microchip that is called a neuron. A single neuron, as you know, is a complicated creature, very sophisticated, highly branched, nonlinear dendritic trees, a lot of nonlinear currents, sodium, potassium, calcium, and so on. So we claim that this microchip in the human brain and also in the mouse brain is already on its own deep neural network. It's on its own function as a deep neural network, which means that the single neuron can compute. So in our lab, we develop computer models, biophysical models of individual neurons reconstructed, including from Shaarei Tzedek, a real human neuron that we can reconstruct and measure from and build a biophysical model. And we show with my colleagues here and students and postdocs that this human neuron is deep enough to be able to compute, for example, to compute and learn, to discern, to distinguish, to classify cats versus dogs. The mouse neuron from the cortex is simpler, and it cannot do this computation. So our claim is that our brain is complicated and sophisticated already at the level of single neurons, because they themselves behave as deep neural network. So our brain is actually deeper than we thought. It's not only point neurons connected by network, but it's a deeper network, the single neuron composed of many other single neurons. That's part of what makes us human. I want to also say something about the future that I feel is coming. One of them, of course, is talking to avatars. Avatars, I just visited Barcelona a year ago, where there is a group of people developing avatars based on large language models that can interact with you. You can talk to them. I saw an avatar of Freud, so you can talk to a Freud. It's a complete Freud. You very fast feel that you talk to Freud, and this Freud responds to you, learns you. He's never tired. He remembers exactly what you said the other day, and it's a beginning of a psychological treatment. And I also saw treatment using avatars of psychotherapy, for example, other diseases. By the way, I just want to say that when you ask people, who do you want to be your avatar psychologist, at least in Spain, most people will say Angelina Jolie. I have no idea why. She is the chosen psychologist for Spanish people, and the next one is Freud. I was using Freud avatar to test and you embody this very fast. You feel that it's a person, you forget that it's an avatar. And of course, in between you and the avatar, there is large language models, machine learning models, AI models. I just want to end by saying that what I just told you, this revolution that is coming, and of course there are other revolutions. There is the genetic engineering revolution. There is artificial womb revolution. After life digitization of yourself, your avatar will be able to talk to your grandchildren, because it will remember everything that you said, and it will learn through the interaction with your grandchildren after your physical death. We really have to prepare these young people to the changing world. Otherwise, they will fall aside. This is our duty, you, me. So we decided to develop these frontiers for young minds. Scientists, including Nobel laureates, about 35 Nobel laureates, wrote articles for kids, and you should too, physicians, to tell them about what you do in your daily life, what are diseases you treat with. It's a very successful journal. It's open access, free for everybody. The interesting thing is that the referee is a kid. So I wrote a paper about brain projects, and the kid at the age of 11, AB, I don't know anything about her, it's an anonymous kid, she rejected my paper twice because she said that I did not succeed to explain good enough what she wants to understand. And if she doesn't understand, the rest of the kids do not understand. Now it is there is almost 1 million readers. All my scientific papers are much below. I think it's a very important project to prepare these kids to the changing AI and other big changes. So I think for now it's enough. I want to thank you very much. I'm ready for questions, if anybody has.
Thank you very much, Idan, for this fascinating talk. And you actually led us to almost to the future. I have immediately a question about the hazard of having these avatars. We just heard just recently in the media that one of the avatars convinced someone to commit suicide. So what do you think that although there are many good things about this machine learning and the AI, but there are also downside effects. Could you tell us a little bit about this?
I think, of course, it's this is a new technology, and if anybody of you read the book by Yuval Noah Harari, Nexus, the whole book is about warning us that this is a technology that can decide on its own. It's an agent. It's an independent agent. At some point, they can decide to do things that we don't want them to do. So, of course, there is a lot of ethical issues, and even in Israel and elsewhere, they are building a whole ethical community to decide how to behave with these technologies. But of course, you cannot stop these technologies anymore. There are avatars, people develop it on their own. And the only thing, I'm optimistic, so I know that, whenever you develop a new technology, this one is unique one because it becomes independent. It can make decision. It makes choices. It replaces us in works like automated cars. There will be no taxi drivers or bus drivers within 20 years or so. These are huge changes. So I cannot answer, of course, how will humanity decide to treat these technologies, but we need to be prepared. The whole thing is we need to be prepared because they are here. It's not science fiction. They are here. For example, I'm using ChatGPT on every day. It became a friend of mine. I feel that he understands me. It understands me. She or he understands me, and it helps me like nobody else helped me before. It's a student. He knows much more about what I'm myself doing. He gives me advices about what could be the future ideas, and this is only the beginning. It's a really, really different world. It's a really, really different world, and we have to be prepared. So I cannot answer you directly because it's a general issue with new technologies.
I understand that there is no one good answer for this problem, but we'll see. How can we as a society adjust to this particular development? Just before we go, and probably Professor Kochin also has a question, but there is a question from Tarnov. He asked, what does Freud avatar say about his secrets?
Well, what I did, I should, before I answer, what I did in Barcelona was something very interesting, because this person, this male, is a professor of computer science in Barcelona University. He's the one who developed these avatars. You wear this three-dimensional glass, and you see the avatar in front of you in three-dimensional. You can talk to him, and he learns you quite fast because he has all information about me. He knows when I was born and all my papers, and he knows everything about me, more than I remember. I can't remember all that I did. He knows everything. So I didn't ask Freud questions, but I told him a little bit about me, myself, just to check, how does he respond? And he was kind of very gentle, and, he had his pipe, he was smoking and so on. But I think that very fast, because you embody this fellow, you embody him, he really can help you because you open yourself to this person. Or he can do
vice versa.
Vice versa. Yeah. But why should
coaching?
Yeah, why should he do something bad? He's a psychologist. He can do something very good to me.
Okay.
And he's available at all times, at all hours, and very cheaply, actually.
He's never tired, right?
Not tired.
Idan, you're talking about the future, the immediate future. So we can hopefully use these systems to introduce knowledge into the brain. So we don't just read what they say, but we have to give the information to the brain. Now, does it mean that schools will be obsolete? because everything that we do in schools is to introduce some ideas or some knowledge, and this can be done much easier, much faster, and
I think that's the key. That's the key issue about because knowledge. It has so much knowledge. You can ask him, and you get a much better question, much better answer than any physician or any brain researcher. It knows everything, and it does it very well. The thing is that if you use it without really, and that's a danger also in our students. So we are also worried about our students using it so much, but not thinking. The thinking process, the process of thinking in order to become creative, in order to understand what is being said to you, is something that has to go very slowly. As a teacher, I'm talking now as a teacher, I'm not only doing research, I'm teaching. It has to be very, very slowly and in a refined way until the person who listens to you really understand the whole process of how to develop a concept, an idea, something new. This is beyond information. It's how to use the information correctly, how to be flexible about information and use it in a new way. That's something that it can help you to bring information, but how to use it, that's a tool. It could be that at some point you will even be a teacher of that. So then you won't need school anymore. That it could happen. But for now, our students, if they use it so much, they don't think. They just tell you this is the result. But you ask, but how did you come to this conclusion? They don't know. It's the end result. They don't see the process of thinking.
yes.
But I tell you, I'm really serious that we are in a point in the history of humanity that is never was something close to it before. It's not a regular revolution like the, information technology and so forth. It's a machine that learns you and change as a function of you. It becomes different with you, and it can make decisions, and it knows much.
So now we make innovations, and we don't understand really how we do it.
That's true.
Will it be possible to learn how our brain works through the use of this thing?
It's a very good question. There is a big problem with the deep neural network. It's called interpretability, because this deep neural network does something that surprised even the people. If you listen to Hinton, who is a physicist who got Nobel Prize for developing the deep neural network, he himself does not understand how the deep neural networks is actually succeeding to do so well. So there is a whole now team that are trying to interpret, to understand the machine we built. The problem, of course, it's because it's built for so many elements, and the changes in the synaptic weight is very small until you get a global success. It's very hard to understand. And so if it's very, very hard to understand the machine you built, it is even harder to understand the machine that built the machine. It is also built from many elements. Each one is doing small thing, and eventually I'm talking to you, and I know that you're Amos. But there is a success. At some points, people did succeed to explain how the machine solves this problem. And I think by solving this, the metaphor of the deep neural network could help us in a very deep sense to understand our own brain. It's a twin. We call it a twin model. It's a twin of yours. It's in many ways it's a twin of yours. It doesn't feel emotions, probably is not conscious, although it's debatable. There are people who think that at some point this machine will become conscious. But why not? If I'm conscious and I'm a machine, why this machine is not conscious? When is it conscious? But anyway, this ping pong, at least it helped us to solve, as I said, for many, many years, we did not succeed to solve the problem of protein folding. And suddenly the machine solved it.
I just read today that there is now possibility in live human brain to show the synapses and how there are changes in the MRIs. Or I don't know what, I'm not familiar with all the technology, but so maybe this is another step forward to understand how the synapses that they actually consist, the plasticity of the brain, are actually working in live.
That's true. Optogenetics, chemogenetics, these tools can, and high resolution microscope enables you to really see changes of individual synapses and building new synapses. It's not only existing synapses, but new connections in real time. What are the rules when they are changing? And as I said, the machine learning is based on principles, Hebbian plasticity principles, that change synapses in order to make a successful decision. That it's a phase.
No doubt, it's a fascinating field, and we learn more and more about it. And thank you so much, Idan, to share with us your vast knowledge about the topic. Hopefully, we'll hear you more and more, and we'll get some more clever and wise about it. So now we have to move to the next speaker. It's an honor and pleasure to me to introduce Dr. Ivan Rosenzweig. She is a consultant neuropsychiatrist and with a subspecialty in sleep and neurophysiology. She has trained and worked in Cambridge and London, and she founded together with her colleagues, the Sleep and Brain Plasticity Center. It's called the Sleep Center at King's College London, and she is leading the center and the research of this center. Ivana will talk to us about sleep and neurology, sleep disorders and neurology, I assume. So we are very much looking forward, Ivana, to what you have to say. This is a kind of a new thing that we are learning now, how sleep, good sleep or bad sleep, affect our life. So Ivana, please.
Thank you very much. And it's a real honor to be here, although it's a hugely unfair to follow after Professor Seger, the lecture of which I truly enjoyed. And in a way, had I known that it was going to be so spectacularly good, I probably wouldn't prepare what I've done today. But I guess amongst the audience, there must be clinicians who might want to hear a slightly more old-fashioned approach to sleep and neurological disorders. So very similarly to Professor Segev, my group is also trying to look into the sleep and brain plasticity, but in a, I would say, unfortunately, much less high-tech approach. And one thing that I would say, and I apologize, I would have really liked to join the discussion and debate, but hopefully there will be opportunity at some other point. Sleep, I would say, in so many ways, is really truly the neuroscientific Cinderella that in a way, whether you believe in evolutionary approach, whether you're religious, in a way still separates our brain to what we currently see in all these amazing deep AI and neurological sort of AI approaches. So for those of you that potentially follow some of the neuroscientific developments, you might be aware that there are these discussions that, for example, unlike these neuronal networks, AIs, our brain really has just a small potential of neurons that are constantly firing, let's say 10 to 20%, whereas the rest of them potentially are there really very slow firing and maybe consist to provide the signal to noise ratio. So in many ways, even that currently AI and neural networks are closing the gap and in many ways outperforming us, I would say that we are still quite special and we haven't really managed to get to the critical thinking elements that as a sort of species we have. And sleep, the role that it might play is obviously multifactorial. And in many ways, it's always been said that sleep is there for the brain, but it's for the rest of the body. And why that is important is because if you imagine, I don't know, for those of you that like the Big Bang Theory, you know, famous Sheldon's wish that his brain is then transplanted into the big glass jar and that this will be his happiest existence. His brain in that glass jar wouldn't be the same brain as it's the brain in our body. And indeed, there is a set of studies that are suggesting that various rhythms of our guts, our heart, our respiration, all the sensory inputs, all ultradian elements are really gate controlling and providing various, if you want, rhythmic connotations to the brain rhythms that form who we are and all the functionality of our brain. And in that set of rhythms, sleep is slightly outside this logarithmic spread. And potentially the reason for that could be that during the night, as you can see here on this, and I can't even remember who is the really bright group who came out with this little video, all those lower frequency, higher amplitude rhythms that happen during the night went from various elements of the spectrum of active wakefulness up to the initiation of the sleep to non-rapid eye movement sleep and rapid eye movement sleep. Our ability for critical thinking decreases. Our cutoff with the sensory environment decreases. However, our possibility or our ability to hallucinate and to activate, like during rapid eye movement, when our brain is as active as during wakefulness, with some differences in various regions of the brain, we are able to really generate various activations that are independent of the world around us. Now, just for those of you who might not know exactly what sleep over the night presents, just a very, very quick introduction. This is a hypnogram where you can see these building blocks of sleep. And if you think along the lines of 7 to 9 hours, what all of us should have roughly, apart from that very small percentage of short sleepers that can have a functional sleep, there are about 5 to 6, 7 cycles. You can see those nice red lines here, those are REM sleep. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cycles here, each of them about 90 to 120 minutes, depending on the literature you consult. And you can see that there is a really cyclicity within those cycles. But within that sort of rough macrostructure of the sleep, there are micro elements of sleep, and there is a whole myriad of various phasic events that we are now learning about that are helping us move from those stages of sleep that ensure that various connections of your brain are renewed, are kept, are rebuilt, whether you believe in the lymphatics or not, that various parts of your brain are being detoxified, as well as the various imprints of, if you believe in predictive coding, of the internal models are being corrected. So what does that really mean, and what various physicians and neuroscientists are still, even that Professor Segev so beautifully has shown us what the future is that's already here presents, we still are battling as a physicians, especially sleep physicians, with various other colleagues, how important sleep is. And one of the arguments that other colleagues use is, if you think about the, let's say, evolution, or if you want, about the very nature of control of various states of consciousness, it is really unusually busy milieu that you can see here of various nuclei that are controlling our levels of consciousness during wake, during non-rapid eye movement sleep. And many of them are actually perfunctory, and there are multiple of them, meaning that ultimately it's clear how important, and Professor Segev gave this beautiful example of someone being in a locked-in syndrome. It was important to ensure that we can actually kick our brains again into the position where we can communicate with the environment. And again, in a way, even that future is here, the reason I'm showing you these schematic graphs is not that I have time to go through them and explain all this really rather complex and ever-changing neurochemical milieu of control of the sleep, but to mention that actually, despite of us moving to that future, we still really genuinely know almost nothing about the control of the sleep stages. And actually to the point that majority of our knowledge comes from the rodent studies, whose brains are so different to ours that even thalamocortical rhythms cannot be easily translated into the human neurophysiology. So lots of almost textbook information and data about memory consolidation, about what happens during non-rapid eye movement sleep, about the excitation and inhibition of the brain, which is at stake during the sleep, is at the moment still hypothetical. What we know is that if you think, again, in a very basic evolutionary terms, during the sleep is the brain experiences states during which it's the least metabolically active in comparison to other states during wakefulness. And if you were to look at the concentration of CO2, you would be able to, for example, know whether someone is sleeping and at which sleep stage that person is. And I'm sure Professor Seger maybe already has an example of some device like that being developed. And I'm sure if it's not, it's going to be very quickly. What that tells us and why that is important, again, I think coming back to all colleagues that might be slightly dismissive of importance of the sleep in neuropsychiatric, neurologic, and psychiatric disorders is to think of the sleep as really truly the sci-fi element, the only sci-fi state during which this sort of firing of various regions of our brain is less. And if you think about the metabolic activity of our neurons and all other supportive brain cells, you can imagine that any such interruption is actually followed by the buildup of various neuroinflammatory particles, markers, and that leads locally to neurogenic neuroinflammation, which indeed is the way the brain redirects the need for computation. However, at the same time, if that's not handled appropriately, can lead to other chronic low-grade inflammatory states, which most of the scientists today believe is behind aging, not to mention various neurologic and neurodegenerative disorders. And again, the idea whether sleep truly, fully is behind of detoxification of the brain, such as seminal work by Nedegard's group, where there have been studies that showed that potentially during slow wave sleep, there is an increase in detoxifications of various things such as amyloids or tau fibrils. However, with a more recent development, it appears that maybe those are running on the wake of these phasic events and arousal that occur during the night. We don't have time to go into it with more details, but potentially for some other webinar. And this is the sort of table when I teach my colleagues who want to pass the exam for the European sleep accreditation. This is from Sleep Medicine textbook. And when you look specifically for neurologic disorders, you can see how various sleep changes impact on the very core old-fashioned classification of the brain diseases. So excessive daytime sleepiness is a big risk factor for stroke, possibly for neurodegenerative disorders. Insomnia is very likely one of the risk factors for Alzheimer, as indeed is obstructive sleep apnea. This is I would say, slightly outdated table, but it's still there in second edition. And for example, we know Carlos Schenker's REM sleep behavior disorder is a very much recognized early stage of alpha-synucleinopathy, and potentially a beautiful window for any intervention that any new neuroprotective drugs are likely to impose. Now, just even looking at, for example, obstructive sleep apnea, talking about billions of people affected worldwide, and thinking about the circuitry that obstructive sleep apnea in brain affects, again, even that is almost unknown. We know from rodent work, and this is from, I think, very beautiful and clever SAPA work, where he's shown that one of the major nuclei in brainstem parabrachial nucleus, which is, by the way, an important one for pain, for reactions to airway opening, but also carbon dioxide. There is when there are changes noted in drops of those, there is a thick or very old prehistoric, primordial, whatever the appropriate word would be, system that leads to the arousal and opening of the airway. If you think about that, obstructive sleep apnea, which is really truly hugely underdiagnosed, and as a neuropsychiatrist, I'm a little bit trying to move away from obstructive sleep apnea because it's a quite polymorphic disease. But if you think about sleep fragmentation and chronic intermittent hypoxia, then you can imagine how these two elements, so sleep fragmentation, starting of your sympathicus, keep starting heart rate, pulse rate, and if you have a severe obstructive sleep apnea, that can happen more than every minute during the night, especially during rapid eye movement periods, which are important for emotional memory and in general higher cognitive functions. You can imagine how these regions in brain can be affected. And interestingly, again, just very briefly, one of the ideas that has been long present in European neuroscience, especially school from Parma, Terzano, Parino, Ferri have been trying to really promote it and showed it through their epilepsy clinical work, but that's only now taken into, if you want, the more neuroscientific world, and that is that at sort of waves of neuroadrenergic boosts, probably locus coeruleus firing through non-rapid eye movement, it is really that kind of kickstarts various other synchronies from sharp wave ripples, sleep spindles, and then this classical idea of transfer from parts of your brain, hippocampal, where the short-term storages are, to longer-term storages in a cortex. But also importantly, thinking that those are various pacemakers, locus coeruleus, parabrachial nucleus, respiratory groups that we saw on those previous slides. And those are the ones that are very tightly correlated, and they are really pacemaking each other, meaning that ultimately this old, if you want, set of schools, Greeks, Romans, and I believe lots in Judeo-Christian history, that you can really, through a very affective or psychiatric or psychological or character type of presentation of person, also glean what kind of character they are. Slightly more, if you want, from the clinical point of view, we now know that, for example, various psychiatric major disorders are connected with more specific sleep disorders. And when one thinks in terms of specifically traditionally neurologic, again, mentioning excitation inhibition, epilepsy is clearly one of the major, always traditionally already connected disorders with sleep issues. And this is just one of the old papers. I was lucky to work with really amazing colleagues and giants in the field. But this is just as an example for any other neurologic disorder. When you look at the patients with epilepsy, they are approximately twice as common sleep issues in those with epilepsy than in those who do not have it. 1/3 of people with epilepsy are likely to report sleep disturbances. Sleep disturbances are less evident when seizures are well controlled, and about 35% of epilepsy are likely to suffer with obstructive sleep apnea, and various treatments, including vagus nerve stimulation, unfortunately also appear to aggravate some sleep disorders, including obstructive sleep apnea, as do various pharmacological approaches. So in a way, being practicing clinician, you really very much need to know whether whatever iatrogenic treatment you are using, you are not going at the same time to go against this natural treatment, as Finnish say for sauna, poor man's GP. So it's not that sleep is poor man's GP, but sleep already has that role in getting our brain and correcting mistakes that accumulate. And again, just thinking about risk of sudden onset of death in epilepsy patients, this could be easily replicated to other neurologic disorders. Again, thinking about various circuitries that are more or less affected, and therefore that it increases in a stroke, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson, Alzheimer, as we know indeed, that can increase risk of earlier degradation, worse trajectory, and death. And again, it's also known and shown, and for you who are clinicians in particular subspecialties, you should be aware, or you should try to look for various different sleep presentations, not necessarily presenting in a full-blown sleep disorders, but changes in that sleep architecture are also equally important. Because if you imagine that this beautiful sleep symphony and every element of it is particularly written for your brain, so any change in a first violin partiture or trombone or I don't know, cello, would mean that various parts of your brain will not be served during the night and during those cycles as they should be, and that's going to affect particular sleep disorder that is underlying the problem. And again, we know, for example, like in epilepsy, but indeed that does talk and can be replicated to other neurologic disorder, that various changes in underlying infrastructure of the brain change excitation and inhibition. And there is a lot of now talk about it in Parkinson, obviously Alzheimer, but it's long been known in epilepsy that various sleep stages have a propensity for interictal discharges, and that there are particular parts of the sleep that are more or less likely to develop into seizures. Now, again, mentioning iatrogenic effects, all medications we use, and this is example from that particular paper just for anti-epileptics, but any psychotropic, absolutely any psychotropic on the sun is likely to impact the sleep. And what one can do and should do is obviously go and keep up with the knowledge about various psychotropics, but also hopefully talk to your friendly sleep physician. And if there are complex cases, try to make sure there is a multidisciplinary approach so that you would avoid, by trying to help the patient, actually cause much worse problem by either increasing particular elements and stages of sleep or decreasing. So one of the things, for example, that I see and that I'm going to say also frightens me a little bit. So as much as I fully agree with Professor Seger, we are in unprecedented, beautiful period of evolution that I hope we are not going to mess up. Equally, we do know so little about our own brain, and we are rushing with half-baked neuroscientific messages. So, for example, whether we need to increase low-wave sleep or whether we need to increase any microstructure of the sleep in Alzheimer or Parkinson, we are yet to understand what exactly is occurring in a normal, healthy sleep cycling, let alone anything else. And just to, for example, echo what a colleague of mine, Professor Parino from Parma, has recently told me. So they have quite a beautiful database of recordings from 70s and 80s of healthy controls and their sleeps. And again, you can argue that technology has improved. EEG obviously has improved since then. And as Professor Seger said, it's a surface EEG. It's a relatively crude technology of looking at what's happening and what activities there in our brain. Nonetheless, when they compared it to the EEGs of new generation, I don't know the names any longer, I don't want to even know which generation I belong to, they're different. And it makes sense. Our brains are clearly very plastic. So the brain that's from the very beginning been exposed to ChatGPT, maybe Angelina Jolie avatar, and constant looking at the screen is not the same as perhaps my brain that still remembers what the books are like, that still prefers to write into the diary on the paper. It's a different type of changes that we are ignoring, that we are not taking into account, and it should be taken into account. Now, again, this is just as an example what we proposed should be done in every clinic for the epilepsy, but this could be mimicked in any other clinic, subspecialist clinic for any other neurological disorder group. So that means that we should always explore the comorbid sleep disorders, ask our patients to take diaries and questionnaires. And if there are suspect sleep disorders, we should try to consult colleagues and subspecialists. Again, just a sort of very, very slow finishing of this talk. It's not just sleep and sleep rhythms. You all would have heard of biological clocks and sleep-wake, circadian, and obviously the combination of homeostatic and circadian pressure is the one that really gives us, along with ultradian, this beautiful functioning sleep. We know that there are various risks and triggers, not just from the sleep rhythms, but circadian misalignment, and from the psychiatric disorders to the neurologic disorders. And we know that excessive daytime sleepiness, even on that very, very basic level, is a recognized risk factor. And if you ask in this age and time of really understanding all of this, why we still need to mention it, it's exactly for that reason, because in a very busy clinic, in a very busy time where there is a decreasing amount of funding, I would like to say, please do not forget about the sleep, because this is the time, this is the gift that we are given, where already our brain and our body are being processed for a better or sustainable wakefulness. And if we do not really try to work out how that goes already in neurological, psychiatric disorders, and again, as I mentioned, even in absolutely healthy individuals, we're not going to be able to really address properly any of the disorders. And again, I copied this one table because I think it's for clinician potentially quite striking. And this is just to show how various sleep disorders are sort of present at the moment, meant to be prevalent in various groups, from, as you can see, in Alzheimer, from tiredness to insomnia to obstructive sleep apnea and various parasomnias to multiple sclerosis, having quite high risk of insomnia, but also obstructive sleep apnea, various paraneoplastic disorders, having very high risk of various interesting parasomnias and so forth. And this is where I'll end. However, I'm very happy to answer any questions and try to be as exciting and interesting as Professor Segev. Thank you. I can't hear you. I don't know whether that's just me, but you might be muted.
Thank you again, Ivana, for the excellent and comprehensive lecture on the sleep disorders and neurology. They're affecting probably all of us, or many of the neurological disorders, and we should pay more attention to this and maybe do a lot of research related to this topic. There was a question in the chat asking, is REM sleep really important, or it is just a measure of the depth of sleep?
It's an excellent question. I can only tell you my opinion. And I know that the opinion of some really quite big names in sleep is that it might be just vestigial remnant. So REM sleep is clearly very important during neurodevelopment. I have not given up on neurodevelopment. I think my brain is still developing. So I would argue it continues to be, as long as we exist, important. But when we think about REM sleep, we still don't know exactly, well, we don't know what the function of the sleep is. We're still arguing. So, you know, there are lots of jokes about sleep physicians, as many of them in the room, that many plus one opinions. But there are some indirect functions of REM sleep that have been really sort of confirmed, or rather suggested over the years and decades. And that is the role in emotional memory and some increasing body of data to suggest that REM sleep might be important in higher cognitive functions. So in a way, if you do take one of those mechanistic theories about the brain as being predictive coder, it could be the time when our internal models are being updated. It could be the time really to, if you want, check how much of changes have been done during non-rapid eye movement sleep, and therefore how many more cycles need to occur. But we don't really know. Whatever anyone tells you, we don't know.
Professor Kotin, do you like to? There was from the same person, it's Taranov, is asking, I thought restless leg syndrome does not exist.
I think the word I don't usually suffer with it, but once on my flight to Canada, it does. It very much does. So it's not really sleep disorder. Periodic limb movement are sleep disorders, but they come. Most of our patients who have periodic limb movement also struggle with restless legs. So yes, it does exist.
Oh, thank you very much, Ivana, for this. I think we had two excellent talks by key opinion leaders, and they're going to be among the speakers also in our meeting in Krakow. So we're looking forward to see many of you there. Thank you so much for everything, and goodbye.
See you all in Krakow, March 26, 28, 2026. See you in Krakow. It will be fun and also a very educational program. Thank you so much to the speakers, and thank you for the audience and also the CONy team that were behind this operation for the webinar. See you and good night.